Hello and good afternoon. We are here today speaking on conflict. This is from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. And today I, Angela Brown, am here with Omuugn, and we are going to unpack some of the interesting ideas about conflict. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, conflict, why do we want conflict in our lives? Well, we don't necessarily want it, but it's going to show up. So please help me welcome Omuugn. Hey, Omuugn, how are you today?
Oh, great. It's good to be here this morning.
If we have conflict in our lives, and in order to mask the pain of the conflict, we drink alcohol or do drugs or eat comfort foods and packaged foods or whatever it is. If we are covering the pain of that conflict, the addictions are real and the side effects are real and the cause and effects are real. And now we have more conflict as a result of trying to bury the conflict in the first place instead of resolving it. So eating comfort foods and caving into addictions is not the solution to resolving conflicts in our lives.
Yeah, and there are other things along the same vein. For example, if you're a lazy person, you're actually producing future conflict because things that need to be done on a timely basis are not done. You're going to be arguing with people, or you're going to be late on your scheduling or on the work that you're required to do. You'll fall flat on your responsibilities. Another thing is procrastination. If you let things pile up and you don't get things done, a family that I know, that everyone in the family hated to do dishes. And so they would just put the dishes in the sink until there weren't any more dishes available. Whereas if you get up from a meal and swish the dishes off and put them in the dishwasher and away you go, life is just a lot smoother and you don't have the conflict. Otherwise, you're just embroiled in conflict all of the time, just day after day over the same issues, which brings us to another thing, our habits. Our habits either help us to avoid conflict or they produce conflict. Sometimes our habits are not the best way to do things, and it impacts the people around us, maybe in negative ways. Sometimes we break our resolutions that we talked about because of our habits. Sometimes instead of making changes that are really needful in our lives, we will fall back into areas where we're comfortable, where we habitually operate in our comfort zone. We don't ever get out there on the front lines and really make changes that would be dynamic and beneficial in our lives. And so we're always conflicted within ourselves because we're living so far below our potential. If we reorganize things and realize that being lazy is not a characteristic that is productive for my life. Having bad habits is not productive for my life. Using addictive substances, that's not productive for my life. We need to make some decisions that are really significant, and then our lives will be dynamically different. We had this big saying hanging up in our kitchen for years that said, daily dynamic transition. You don't want to be tomorrow where you are today. You want to be better. You want to make tomorrow better than it was today. If we make little tiny changes in our life, little tiny changes in our bedtimes or in the foods that we eat or our exercise programs, they have gargantuan effects later on that will really make our lives different. As you get
Well,
older, you still want to be healthy and strong and viable. You don't want to just live longer on medications. You want to be a really pleasant, loving person that people want to be around and interact with.
I heard a saying one time that stayed with me, and the saying was, your habits will expose or promote you. I've thought about that a lot because over my life, I think to myself, is this going to promote me or is this going to expose me?
Absolutely. You can create habits that are really beneficial. For example, I can make a decision that I'm not going to become angry. I'm not going to argue with people. I am going to be a pleasant person who communicates well. That's the kind of person that I'm going to become. So you work on all of the habits that will make you that person. You need to be able to see yourself as you would really like to be.
I think when you create those boundaries and you're clear about those boundaries, it becomes easier to implement.
We need to decide how we're going to deal with conflict. Conflict is just a natural part of life. And it doesn't have to be negative. Conflict is just a change. It's a difference. Two people both have a different belief system. How are they going to interact so that interaction is positive rather than negative? You can resolve conflicts easily by deciding not to make a conflict negative. I'm not going to argue with people. If something is important to someone to the extent that they want that to be their reality, I will support that because I prefer peace and tranquility over what that thing would produce for me. Sometimes you have to stand up for your values, but you can fight in a way that is very, let's call it sophisticated.
Mm.
We can fight for things that we believe in constructive ways.
And what I hear you saying today, and I think it's really important, is begin with the end in mind. If you know what the end result looks like, you can plan the steps of logic and compassion and patience in between so that when you deal with that conflict, it's at a responsible and in an educational way that the people around you go, oh, wait a second, that makes sense. I can go along with you for the ride. And so if we can begin with the end in mind and we can do this in a logical sense, I think that we can see this particular cause and effect is going to create some conflict. And if I'm careful right now in advance, I can prevent that from being a massive event and it can just be kind of a small event and it can be manageable.
And in line with that too, the smaller the conflict, the easier it is to resolve. If we act in a timely way to things that are not going the way we want them to go, it's much easier to resolve that than letting something grow into a real problem. So be aware. It's the concept of mindfulness where you're aware of your surroundings. You're aware of the people around you and what's going on. And if a conflict arises in a difference of opinion, clarify it right in the moment. Don't let things build up and build up until they become real issues. The quicker you can resolve conflict, the better it is.
This was a great topic. I have learned so much, and I think this is a phenomenal lesson for anybody that's just going from point A to point B in life. Learn to resolve the conflicts before they arise. This is good stuff. If you haven't already, please pick up your copy of The Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. We are going through this meeting with Omuugn to discover some of the interesting insights and wisdom that will help you become a better person, a better leader, and a better manager so that you can be the very best version of yourself. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you again next time.
Pleasure. Thank you.